Hello, welcome to The Point. This week, games often get a bad rep in the mainstream press for taking time away from our real lives. But what if games were actually able to enrich our lives away from the screen?
The Point, Season 3, Episode 2. Can games change who we are? AKA, why did Andy buy a Subaru?
Hockey season started up this week. It's basically the most video game-ass sport ever, but it's not really that popular on the British Isles. It's broadcast at the wrong time of day, and truth be told, we have enough weird sports to keep us busy. However, I know how it works. I understand the rules, the plays, the back and forth, and probably most of the teams. But why? Well, because in 1992, Electronic Arts released the EA Sports double-header for the Mega Drive in Europe. 2 games in one, John Madden Football and EA Hockey. Everyone bought it because it was basically 2 games for one, and suddenly a generation of Sega gamers in Europe had a basic grasp of 2 largely obscure sports. I guess this is to be expected. If you interact with any system long enough, its rules become second nature, and because the worlds of games are so rich with content, it's not just systems we come to understand. For instance, God of War gave a generation a loose grasp of Greek mythology, Assassin's Creed allowed us to explore European history, and hell, Bioshock was a crash course in Randian objectivism. So it is possible to learn from games, but I'm not sure if they tend to change who we are like other forms of art. When I was growing up, the easiest way to identify yourself and your peers was with the music you listened to and the films you watched. Music inspired the clothes you wore, films changed how you thought about stuff. Or maybe you listened to certain music because you were a certain way, but there was a fundamental connection between the art and the person. As an adult, this happens too. I recently started learning mixed martial arts after watching UFC for 2 years. We're bombarded by different aspects of culture on a day-to-day basis via television, websites, radio, advertisements, restaurants, even just conversations. We're constantly being molded by our experience, and much of that comes in the form of entertainment media. But games to me have always been different. Games are an escape from our culture, like plugging into the Matrix or having a dream. The experience in games exists in a bubble and never really changes who I am as a person, right?
At least that's what I thought until Andy behind the camera there decided to buy a Subaru WRX last month, and I'm pretty sure it's because you've been mainlining Forza for the past year. Get over here. Get over here.
Telling the story about how you do something, it's like spinning the narrative in a way, right? There's so many factors that led up to me getting a WRX.
Yeah.
I've always loved Subarus. My family's always had them. I haven't had a car that I've never really bought my own car, so that's kind of something I want to do. I got divorced, I'm 30, I want to do something irresponsible. Like there's all these things that like line up. But yeah, when it comes down to it, it probably was Forza that like actually wanted me to get an interesting car, right? And since I love Subarus, the WRX is the most interesting in the lineup. And like that's the car I use and I've been using in Forza 5. I mean, obviously the STI version in Forza 5 is like a little bit better. It has like 6 gears, whereas, you know, the model I have only has 5 gears. So it's like a little bit, it's not like quite that hardcore, but it's so fun to drive. It seriously has changed my outlook on cars, whereas before a car was just like something I got kind of like handed down to me from people who didn't want their car anymore. And now, especially when we were filming with that car, and I have joyrided a little bit with it, but like I kind of pushed it hard when we were filming. It doesn't look like on camera because, you know, it's always slower on camera, but like the car is so much fun to drive. It should be illegal. It probably was speeding. Like I feel guilty how much fun it is to drive that car.
Were you into any of that stuff before you started playing, like, because Forza 4 and then Forza 5 when you got your Xbox One, right?
It wasn't until I went to turn 10, filmed a bunch of stuff, they were like so into it. There's this cheesy line that Brian Eckberg used where he's like, we want to turn gamers into car lovers and car lovers into gamers, which like makes so much sense when you're looking at Forza. I totally fell in love with that game, and then there's the aspect of just finally owning a car that's like yours, like your personality. Like this car is definitely like me 100%.
Would you have done that if you hadn't played the game? If you hadn't experienced
I don't know if I would,
that?
yeah, like I don't know if I would have been as gung-ho about it. I would have been like, do I really need, like a car is just a car is just a car. I don't need a car. Why do I want a car? But now kind of falling into it with the game, it's pushed me to that point where like, no, like I can have a really good experience with a car. It's so precise, like the WRX is so precise and it feels so good compared to like my Ford Taurus, which is what I had before, which is like a boat. You're like, fuck that car.
Is the Ford Taurus not in Forza 5?
I don't think so. Maybe if it was, I wouldn't have had to buy it. No, I don't. I'm just an impressionable dude, I think, though. Like, I wonder if that comes into it. Like, I'm kind of a sponge when it comes to people. Like, I'm more of like the fly on the wall, wallflower type, where...
I think that's the same. I think that's just like if you like new experiences, you're that type of person.
Yeah.
Like you are open inherently because you like new experiences.
Hang out with you, I start saying things like fucking Dior.
Really?
HDR.
I really wanted to learn drums because of Rock Band.
Yeah.
I just couldn't. Landlords would not put up with that shit.
Yeah. You know, there's a series I've wanted to do for a long time that's sort of tangential to this, where it's like how gaming has saved my life.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that is probably people telling car stories, where like their reaction time is super good with a car.
I played GTA 4 like the day it came out. I played it non-stop all night, and I was just going to the store. But when I hit the road, there was like a
your perception is totally different.
there was a construction site, and on one side of the road, and there was like a light system, and everyone else was stopped. There's like a train of 20 cars, and I'm in the back.
You're like, why not just go around?
I instantly just went, fuck it, and I drove down into a construction, which was like a 3-foot drop in a fucking Fiat Punto, through all these like parked JCBs, and then popped off the other side and was like, what the fuck was I doing?
But you were just like on autopilot. You were just like...
I was on autopilot until I went down. Yeah. and then I was like, uh-oh. Is this like the after,
That's a different
the
video,
after
though.
credits part of this video where we just talk about all the times we broke the fucking law in car?
And I hear you think you bad. Sinks in, must be mad. I won't trust when you come back with your please. Them girls didn't want no guy like me.